Thanks guys for coming. So we have a few things we're going to go through today. First, we're going to go have a casual conversation about the program highlights, thoughts, changes, and paths to take forward. Then we're going to go on to roles and levels, particularly focusing on questions that need to be answered, and the higher up levels 3, 4, and 5. Which haven't had so much focus until now. And then we shall go on to deep funding round 3 and have a look at a little bit of the pools available and thoughts about making a proposal from individuals in the ambassador program, or as the program in general. So yes, more people. Yes, welcome guys who just joined. We're just bringing everyone up to speed. We're gonna have a casual conversation first of all about the highlights and paths to take forward. Then we're gonna have a look at roles and levels from the higher rungs, 3, 4, and 5, and some questions that we need to discuss. Then look at deep funding round 3. And the opportunities for the ambassador program and individuals to make proposals. If anyone has any questions, fire away. And if not, we shall start our first task of having a check-in with you guys, a casual conversation about program highlights and also thoughts, changes, and paths to take. So this is Incubation Guild that has a 2-hour session now running until 21 UTC. And this is a place where we really want to source grassroots perspectives, wisdom, knowledge from you guys about how to improve the ambassador program. So this is a place where everything is welcome. All thoughts. If you would like to not have your comment recorded, we are not recording on Re.ai. We have Walter who's taking manual notes and a recording. So if you say before or after you speak that you don't want this to be recorded, then we'll make sure that happens. Thanks so much, and let's just open the room to what your thoughts are. A check-in with you guys, please. Welcome.
Vanny, where is the bring everyone to me function? I can't find it.
Oh, I think TiVo's already done it, but it's in the top navigation bar somewhere. You've got an option to do that. But TiVo's already done it for me, so it's okay. But
that's cool. You can do that. Okay, cool. Okay, yeah, we figured the first 10-15 minutes just casual conversation on the program, what's going on right now. And then, yeah, big discussion day is going to be rules and levels. So we can definitely talk about, we've got Sukrin, Vanny, Tommy have all been a big part of onboarding. So we can make sure that we're all on the same page on everything as well.
So how are we? How do we think it's going? With the program, with its development?
I would say my latest quarter highlight is archival work group fund requests. It's a totally different standard as we kind of visioned and started off with how things would look like. And that is a good thing, I think, because it kind of requires us to think even more out of the box than we initially started with, in order to incorporate various ways of just collecting data about transactions.
What do you think about fund requests so far?
To me, it's not anything new. As at first I thought it's like only meant to be used for like big items, like basically proposal requests, but in like a milestone part. But then at some point I realized, okay, they are basically like bounties, so they don't even have that any requirements. So yeah. So they are basically just continuation of the thing that already existed, but now in a written form, so that everybody at least have one way to understand it, and it is correct.
Yeah, that's pretty similar to my perspective so far. Is now that we're into the next month at fund requests. Last month I was like, oh shit, this is a radically different thing than what we were previously doing, but it's nice that we kind of have the different guidelines. You know, if somebody requests 100 or 500 or more, that there's these various levels of oversight to it, and it also gives like a lot of trust to work groups and people to make and do tasks. Something that's been on my mind, mentioned, Walter's been making some good messages. I'm sure other people have too. With all these new people coming in, is guiding them to a certain spot. I think day 1 or day 2 that people were coming in from the email, I was trying to get together like a quick welcome message, and it was hard to get on the same page with everybody. Like, how do you get somebody that's interested in marketing into the video group or writers work group, which there's a solution now today. I saw Kenichi and Rojo, they've both posted the first task for people to get involved with, to get into those groups. Something that was mentioned that I agree with is it's tough when you have closed off groups. I think you need closed off groups for some of the things, like Rojo had mentioned for video. If somebody's sharing their video idea, you don't want it to get stolen. And then also if people give you a critique that's like, hey, I wouldn't put out this video because X, Y, and Z, that person might want to delete it and not want everybody to see it, but they're cool with a select group of video work people to see it. So maybe a possible solution would be to have an open group for all the work groups, and then also have a private group. So you have like an intermediate group. But it does seem like I changed Marketing Guild to Marketing Chat, since there's not really a Marketing Guild anymore. So that does seem like a good intermediate for video and writers. But then also onboarding or any other work group, maybe there should be consideration to have an open work group and a closed work group. What do you guys think about stuff like that? What's up, Walter? What you got?
We kind of jumped from deep funding onto this structure. So are we done talking deep funding?
No,
Yeah,
sorry. The first 10-15 minutes is a casual
Okay.
conversation about
Got it.
the program.
Super. So here's what I see. I assume that marketing didn't survive is because most people here are not like commercial marketing people. And so what I would suggest is to reframe it more as outreach, so it's less scary and less off-putting, because I think a lot of us can get behind that this is like information flow outward looking and so on, kind of bring new blood to it by giving it a new name and hopefully new charter. Because like marketing can sound a little exploitive, right? And highly asymmetrical. We don't have to do it that way. As a matter of fact, we probably have to do a lot of outreach as our charter.
yeah, nice. It was
Yeah.
also considering the purpose of the overall program that needed to be developed at the time, and the alignment with the foundation that's needed in order to develop proper marketing campaigns. That's partly why this marketing guild devolved into the separate work groups. For me,
Yeah, I like that you've been.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I like Walter had messaged me just a little bit about rules, and you've been thinking a lot about naming, which is important for all these different things, because yeah, a name can mean a lot to a person, including like the name ambassador, which we'll talk about later on in rules. Maybe we can go around and just like what's on people's forefront of their mind about the program right now, any thoughts they have or changes, paths to take, or anything like that.
Yeah, I think positively that video and writers work group opened or is opening an ungated room is positive. I think we need a place for people to go in. Walter, you have your hand up. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have jumped in.
Oh, I think his hand's up from previous.
Yeah, go ahead, Tommy.
Yeah, yes, I think that's a positive. I think the letter going out and getting this somewhat for us heavy response is good, and I think we need to step up to handle getting tasks out for people to get them involved. I think that'll be a positive, and I'm really stoked where we've come. I think this new experiment in the FR, since you touched on that, is so far inconclusive, but there's been no issues that have really surfaced that I'm aware of. So I'm positive, and I'm upbeat on where we're heading. I would like to, and Felix's void, and I think we need to acknowledge Felix's void here, needs to be filled, and a big part is the governance document, the governance work group that he was working on. It's somewhat stagnated, so I think we need to get back and finish that in the long game of what is developing. So those are my thoughts. Rojo has his hand up. Good to see you, Rojo.
Thanks, Tommy. Appreciate it. I wanted to comment on the video work group channel being closed and the possibility of having an open one. I actually like Cran's idea, which was like utilizing the marketing guild's channel. Since people are already familiar with it, perhaps utilizing that as like a kind of an incubator to the work groups would be a nice idea. People can have conversations in there. On the other hand, I don't see a utility of just an open, let's say, video work group channel. I really don't see the utility for that. Especially that like the closed channel has a sole purpose of just talking about things or projects that are being worked on. If you have access to it and you check the channel, you'll see just people sharing videos and commenting on those, or like talking about specific governance issues in the workgroup. And the other general conversations are happening in other channels. I mean, it's not like we're just hanging out there. We're hanging out in those channels when it comes to things that are related to the workgroup itself. That's about it.
Yeah, that's nice. I guess there's nothing we need to do in that regard now that Crandano has changed it to marketing chat, apart from each work group kind of helping that channel stay active. But that's great. One question I have, which kind of relates back to the governance work group, is what happens when a work group lead leaves. And I think we've seen this not just with Felix and the governance work group, but also TiVo in the past while since he's been away. Lovely of him to come today, and no expectation of always working, especially through the holidays. Yet what happens when a work group lead kind of takes a break? Should that responsibility be delegated to someone within the work group? And for instance, when it comes to the Ambassador Town Hall, it's a little bit awkward when multiple work groups, their leads aren't there, and there is no one who has been kind of delegated the responsibility to kind of update the community. As a facilitator, I know Peter is very kind, but it's a bit too much to whilst leading the Ambassador Town Hall kind of also catch up on what's been happening with these separate work groups. And I wonder if this could link to this idea that surfaced a while ago in incubation of having work group leads team up, where it's by definition kind of a shared role of being a work group lead. Wondering your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We hit that on an emergency level months ago with Kenichi going to the hospital, and then Rojo having an issue shortly after that. Meetings didn't occur, and we never really got back to it. And now we're in the summer vacation, and I think for the summer it's easy to pass it off that we're on vacation. But I don't know if that was in the agenda, so maybe we want to table this and bring it back somewhere else.
Where would you like to bring it back?
I think incubation is the perfect place for it. If you want to discuss it today, I just didn't think it was on your agenda.
We're coming up.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because
Yeah, go ahead.
we were thinking for incubation, like, yeah, moving away from structure of the program, but then we're realizing today it's nice to have a spot to just have these types of conversations and everything. It's
if we can get and if I take over or someone else takes over governance work group, that might be part of governance and a code of ethics, and it would be the ideal place to bring some of those topics up. So but I would just let's ruminate on it and think about it. What do we do?
Yeah, that's nice.
Maybe for the Tommy, you own the agenda. That's a part of your leadership role. So here's what I can offer. I always strive for cross-training amongst units. More on the, like I always want at least 2 people to know the code base, every skill set in IT. So what I would offer is we start putting in a policy where each functional unit starts cross-training and ultimately has a co-lead that has all the know-how and so on. I think and if nothing else, people could probably use a break even if they're not on a vacation. What I can offer governance is kind of my bread and butter in DAO work. Here's what I can offer. I can try to come up to speed sufficiently to host the Tuesday meeting. And beyond that, separate, okay, let's phone spam. And beyond that, so that's all I would commit to. And then that would give us time to plan it properly, the work, the staffing and so on.
How is governance work group so far since Felix left? Has there been meetings, and has anybody else taken charge so far for those that have been going to governance?
I've attended one before, but I would have to examine notes to tell you who led it.
I mean, Felix has only just left, so we've only had one meeting since at which he announced that he was leaving. So in that meeting, we looked at trying to work on what we already had in train. And I feel like it's kind of important that if the Tuesday meetings continue, they don't just drop what has been done so far and start afresh, because there's been a lot of work put in, and I think it's good work. And some of the stuff that the governance work group has been doing can be picked up to an extent by archives work group because they are quite tightly connected. But what I've suggested up until now was that since there wasn't much of an appetite for having the Tuesday meetings continue, what we do is we create a couple of focus groups to progress the stuff we already had in train and the action items that we already had in place.
Okay, cool. So it sounds like it's gonna be kind of like a collaboration with archive and governance. Are you thinking like you could take lead on it or collaborate with Walter?
I mean,
or what
what
would
I'm
y'all like to do?
What I'm thinking, Walter, is if you're interested in continuing to run the Tuesday meetings, maybe we should have a chat. But it just felt in the last one that there wasn't much appetite for doing that. So it feels like maybe if you're up for maybe spearheading one of the focus groups, maybe that would be a way, because it just feels
Sure,
like
yeah, I'm just concerned that people will show up, and having had this experience for 3 meetings in a row,
I mean, I don't know
was
whether we should
really
take it off the
off-putting.
calendar.
Like, I know you guys are for real, but somebody who haven't seen you in action, this would be like in other projects, like is the project dead?
I mean, my question is, should we take governance work group off the calendar, or should we keep it on?
So here's my only concern is that the current schedule for archiving is 6 a.m. my time, whereas the governance is noon, and I can get up at 6 in the morning once. I'm not gonna do it every week.
No, can I just interject there? Because what I'm saying is that maybe we should not be having the regular governance meetings anymore for a while, and we should be running focus groups. So if you were up for spearheading one of those, then you can pick your own time according to what you want and what whoever else jumps on it with you wants. So
propose you folks make it an executive decision on Tuesday, on this coming Tuesday. If you decide to keep it, I'll somehow, make sure it's up.
That's the thing. What I'm thinking is that from the last meeting that we had, there wasn't much appetite for continuing to meet. So I don't know if anyone's going to show. Maybe
I wasn't at the last meeting, Vanny. So I had been at most of the previous meetings, and it is still summer, and there are some scheduled.
That's true.
So I'd suggest, Walter, if you want to spearhead it, keep it on Tuesday. I will be there at the very least.
Okay, but so let's just firefight this one last time. The meeting starts this coming Tuesday, and then like Wednesday, Thursday of next week, you guys decide how you want to proceed. Governance is kind of bread and butter of open organizations. It's a very strange creature. Everybody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to do it. It's incredible. Like,
I've got to say here, nobody wants to talk about it either, Walter. Do you know what I mean? But what Cran's saying in the chat, with so many new people, could be great to have a governance meeting for those interested. I think that's definitely worth doing. And I sort of feel like trying to onboard people onto focus groups to focus on the specific things that we've got on our action items list from that group, because it feels like we kind of got to try and clear those and see if they're going anywhere before we just start afresh and start doing something else, because we haven't really tried. So it feels like it would be silly to just throw over all the work that's been done.
That sounds good. We can table this until the Tuesday meeting, and go on to the next task after hearing from Tivo.
Very quick note. So I know you guys like bottom-up grassroots, but governance eventually truly shows its colors when conflict happens or when disagreements happen. So what I'd like to kind of, maybe Tom and I will talk about prioritizing certain aspects of the work just in terms of having the
No, I'm
framework.
sorry though. The governance work group has been doing some really good work, and we've got priorities already in place. If somebody, you know, I think it's fine if people want to go and do something else, but I don't think you can prioritize stuff over the top of what's already been done.
Hey guys.
No, I think we continue what we have in the priorities, and we need to fill Walter in and catch him up on the history. But Fly wanted to table this, and Tivo's had his hand up for a long time.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, let's table this until Tuesday. By that time, Walter should be caught up with the content so far. Over to Tivo.
Yeah, about the leading stuff. I feel like on some level, like looking at this like energy that is coming from Discord, just reading and watching where people are moving and what happens in meetings in a written text, it gives this interesting impression of like what happens on ground level, where in this video format there is like much more high bandwidth like information going through, and into like notes it doesn't really reflect. But it's still, we are trying to kind of pass on the best parts of it. At least that has been like my assumption past week. And that's also like an interesting highlight regarding this leaving. And I feel like this should be a bit of natural. Like, again, yes, we are also in Giver PBL, we have this rotational thing that everybody knows how to facilitate, how to prepare, summarize, and it kind of is nice to have that kind of rotation, and it makes the like the sessions themselves like not bulletproof but anti-fragile for the effects of somebody is going off or something happening. But again, like seeing things like work groups and guilds kind of fade off if it's not needed, because we are doing still spaces which are like kind of things happen in that it's there because of a reason, and the purpose will be found if people just want to meet, and like, oh, there is no facilitation of that, but we need to discuss it. Like, there is always potentiality to fill the space or create a new one, and so it's like it's going to look more like organic and on long-term time if you compare it to 6 to 1 year. So I'm not too worried about like should we kind of make it rigid and always make it like robust that it has to happen. I think having it allowed to naturally just come and go is a nice thing too. Regarding the town hall, yeah, I'm also wondering, why do we have to push for the work group happenings in week? If the leads or no participants are here to share, and then we can be skipped, because sometimes maybe it is just a slower time frame, because we are still a small group, we're not an enterprise going crazy. Yeah. And yeah, one final thing on the last like governance discussion. I hope that we do not create governance guild inside Ambassador program yet. Work groups that implement and do some heavy work or like loading up, but I think right now it's not. This group is too small to start internal like governance, I don't know, documentation in a way that we kind of barrier ourselves off, because we have like so many good people around us who also do governance and kind of cross-share between different networks. Because Ambassador program is like a very nice space, I would say. Have been reflecting on that here in a few days ago. but I'm quite sure we are still in like a silos, and these similar groups happen elsewhere, and we kind of need to look. The governance should be just talking with other people in other networks, not trying to design how people should work in here. The governance kind of happens everywhere. Anyway, so,
Yeah.
No, those are awesome points, man.
I kind of yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I totally agree with you. It's cool that there's freedom where each work group could have their own governance structure if they wanted to, or operate how they want. And then the hope with these types of meetings is just kind of try to get some overview from people and see if we can hash things out together. But at the end of the day, I feel like, at least in my mind, every work group can function how they want to an extent. Now, of course, if some work group is like, hey, I need $10,000 or something, there's going to be flags raised, and there needs to be some form of appeals process overall. And that I'm not sure what the priorities of governance is right now, but just to quickly put, it would be good to have a code of ethics, and it would be good, as we discuss roles here soon, like there does need to be some form of appeals process and stuff like that, but there doesn't need to be any heavily integrated governance structure that pervades every work group and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really nice points. And I want to reiterate what Tivo said, that I guess it's kind of about capturing what's already happening rather than planning and creating structures where they don't need to be or where they're restrictive. I do see one of the things I wrote down here, which we can end on, is the oversight on Treasury, which is something that Andre mentioned. The dashboard is currently being developed and will be ready in the next couple of months. I think this will help to kind of really inform the delegation of funds and overall governance. And as we start to quantify these things, it starts to be a lot more easy to kind of label things as they already happen, rather than kind of hypothesizing about things without any concrete material. Now,
maybe
Tivo?
on that something going forward, like I highlight and the changes, I'm going to reduce the time that I spend on like bi-weekly Treasury Guild and Browser Guild, and some of that I will take into also like Treasury development, and I'm basically going to work on the infrastructure a little, so that my idea is to try and experiment to kind of, because now I have a lot of different work groups and like people are doing stuff, to make it a standard rate based on tags, so that when you put T-work tags, then each tag has a different rate based on some custom tokens or basically task points.
That's great. That's very
that
interesting.
also plays in. So
I see hands
and
right.
I noticed,
Yeah, but I would like to table this conversation. If you still have things to say, you are more than welcome to input this onto the Miro board directly. But as time is moving ahead, I would love to move on to the discussion on roles and levels. So there's been a document which has been developed for the last couple of weeks, which you can see here. I've posted the pages beside the Miro board, so you can check it out in the separate document. Most of the information is already here. So there's been a lot of focus so far on these kind of these explorers, contributors, and ambassadors, and we would kind of like to focus on the higher levels of these roles: ambassadors, core ambassadors, and leadership team, because that still needs to be developed quite substantially. We have some questions. If you have questions about core ambassadors or the leadership roundtable, we've put some questions here. I thought we can just cover these first initial questions before launching into the level specific topics. So the first question we can go through is at which level or role should universal income be assigned? I just want to reiterate, the idea is not to decide during this session. There's far too many questions for us to come to consensus on. But this is now like a place to input our thoughts, to see what we can do in, say, 5 minutes per question maximum. So if you would like to be on the Miro board, welcome to input on these tags, and want to throw it over to you guys. Some initial thoughts are level 3, level 4, or 5. Will this be possible at certain numbers once it reaches, say, a maximum? Are they graded? Is this universal income graded differently for levels? Some questions to get the juices flowing. What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, my initial thought was, yeah, will it even be possible at a certain number of people, or will it be reserved for, if we decide that there's some higher levels or anything like that, or work group leads, things of that nature. Right now, to update everybody, it's 700 AJX a month for ambassadors, right? Is that the amount right now?
It's about 80 AJX.
Okay. $780 AJX.
So if
So yeah, just loose conversation. Anybody have thoughts on that?
I
Sorry,
think
could
you're
you repeat the
a couple
question?
of different
It broke
questions.
up for me.
I think, Cran, you're asking a couple of different questions in that one question. So you have the question of at what level should someone be recognized as an ambassador is, I think, the real question. And in the conversations, though we never voted on it, the consensus was typically around 3, level 3. And I think that's what Peter was pushing for. The question of the dollar, do we have enough budget to sustain it if we grow to 20 or 30? That's a totally different question than the first one is at which level. So I would ignore the dollar for the bit. I would just push it off and just focus on 3, 4, or 5.
Yeah, you're right, and it's gonna matter a lot too on if level 3. There's been talk. Should the role be an ambassador? Is that what somebody's striving for, or with the leveling system? As we're figuring out some way of like gamification of doing these levels, if you're a contributor, maybe after being a contributor, there's multiple roles to go into that are similar to what we call today, maybe an ambassador. Maybe somebody's into multimedia, they want to do video, infographics, writing. Maybe somebody's big into governance or research or education or something like that.
Right, but because of that email, we now have people knocking at the door. So this has become a little bit more of a focus for us to make a decision on this. And it is, as Tevo pointed out, it's a percentage and it would decrease, and it's only till the end of this quarter when we can adjust it. But the question, because of the email and the stuff we've been working on in different groups, is role 3, level 3. Is that when you're an ambassador? Is that when you can submit the request to become an ambassador? Is it level 4? Is it level 5? I believe we've hashed out and agreed at the last onboarding of what the steps are, hit D work, etc. So we don't need to rehash that, but we do need to make a group decision. 3, 4, or 5. And I think 3 is the right number.
Yep, I agree with you.
Why?
I'm just thinking that in a previous meeting, and I really can't remember which one it was, we've talked about how maybe it should be quite a slow process. You shouldn't be able to get to level 3 in 2 weeks. You know, it should take 3 months. So what we're saying about the percentage issue, if people coming in now won't be even able to consider applying to be, if we take this route, won't be able to consider applying to be an ambassador for 3 months. So then we can rethink. My question is the ambassador pay supposed to be pay, or is it just almost like a token amount of money to say, yeah, you're part of the team, and people mainly earn money from doing D-work tasks?
Yeah.
Because just to say, I think we have to like make it clear to people what it is and what they can expect. I know this is different because of a certain amount of money might be quite a lot in some parts of the world and not in others, but I think we have to say to people whether it's meant to be pay or not.
Yeah, that's true. You can see that people are asking, you know, a couple people have said, you know, they're basically wondering what the pay is to be an ambassador. So it'd be good to clarify that. Yeah, from my point of view, it is just like a percentage amount of our monthly allocation that goes towards people that have hit a certain maybe commitment level, or yeah, this level 3 that we're ideating on.
I guess
and then
another-
yeah, the main amount would come from tasks or doing things, fund requests and stuff like that.
I guess another question related to this is, if more people join, is the allocation diluted per person? Or is there at some point an uptick? I consider it would probably have to be like a certain allocation, a percentage of the budget, which is then distributed among however many there are, and it would get more over time, and thus the rewards lessen.
I have to say I feel a little unsure about that, because it's almost like a disincentive to get more ambassadors in, because it's to your disadvantage, isn't it? But just talking about the levels, I was chatting with Sukra before, and we were just talking about the idea that maybe we can't completely automate it at this stage, but maybe we have certain things that we think an ambassador should be able to do. We look at capability. We have like, you know, can you do this? Can you do that? Have you done this? Have you done that? And those criteria are very public. And when somebody feels that they have reached that, they fill in a form and say, like, here's the evidence that I've reached it, and I become an ambassador. So it's not so much about levels, it's about capability. The other thing it could be is it could be automated via D-work, and we could say when somebody's got a certain number of D-work task points, then they're eligible.
Yeah, nice thoughts. Tivo?
Yeah, for most of this stuff, I feel like we have gone through this, and I'm okay with the number 3. But yeah, also to bring kind of that understanding that now recently I did an async distribution again, and it may look like this month we will actually hit the monthly budget, considering that you always kind of two weeks of last month budgets on the new month. So, and we are out of last month budget already. Anyway, so I think what's going to be interesting is we're gonna see numbers where we don't have rewards to pay to any of us, because we just ran our funds through the fee at maybe like the last week of the week or the month. And then it's going to give us this interesting situation of, do we level up everybody's budget, just slashing us like 30% off or 30% so that we can fit our work, or we just start doing less and which would probably give us more focus and understanding what is priority. But yeah, go on.
This is really great questions that I think it would be great if Treasury can kind of spearhead these, and I guess it will be much easier once this dashboard becomes available. Tommy, you have your hand up?
Yeah, couple of comments. Contextually, we've discussed and partially agreed on a number of these items. And I think we really need to get something done and move ahead, not just for the sake of doing it, but for progress. And also because of the email, we need to be able to reflect well. The budget, Tiva, we went over with Andre, and we really, it looks like the overage is because of some of the back pay that we released in the last 2 months, and that's hitting the budget from what he gave us, but he couldn't really tell us. According to Peter, we were well within budget other than at other stuff. The beauty of what we created is with the D-Work focus on all the ambassadors is almost everything can be measured by and via D-Work. There are requirements for the universal compensation or whatever we call it. I like that, UBI. But it can all be measured by D-Work, and you have to, the new ambassadors as well as us have to attend certain meetings and do certain tasks in order to qualify for that minimum role. It really is just meant to be a minimum compensation, but focus on creating D-Work or FRs so we get some aggressive things done in this community. And that's why the level 3 seems to make the most sense. Now, the question that just popped in my head as we were talking is, do we step the UBI? So does level 3 come in and earn, and I'm just spitballing numbers, 40% of what level 5 earns? And does level 4 earn 60%? We can discuss that, I think, at a different time, because as Vanny very noted, it's going to be like 2-3 months before someone's ready to earn, because they have to do these tasks. They got to earn so many D-Work points. So we can hash that out. The real question is, these guys and women coming in from the email, some of them I noticed in the chat already said, well, I did that. Am I an ambassador? How do I get my, and that's not the case. They have to submit per the email. And that is the one thing that we did come to consensus, is there has to be a formal application for ambassador. And we don't have that form made out yet. So we need to do that. But first we need to decide at what level.
I think we are starting to touch on onboarding, which is something that I would love to leave to the experts in onboarding work group, and try and maintain a kind of, let's look at it from the 3rd, 4th, and 5th that haven't been so much looked at as yet. I will just open up the floor for you guys to input in the Miro board any thoughts you have on these questions, these green general questions. And then I would love to, after hearing from Vanny, look at the core ambassadors and the leadership team roundtable, because I think there's some focus needed there as well. Please, Vanny.
Yeah, I've just got a question. I know that, as Tommy said, there is already in place some kind of minimum requirements for what an ambassador has to do. Can someone just refresh my memory roughly what they are?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, there's already in place expectations of like how many meetings an ambassador has to attend or how much work they have to do, isn't there? It might not be like strictly enforced, but there is an expectation, and I was just wondering what it is.
Well, there's actually no no formal expectation. I guess there are casual expectations, and these are being worked in on the document that I'm showing to you right now on roles levels in the ambassador program, which you can check in here. It has some.
Yeah, I was sure that there was something. I was sure there was something already. So
There,
Yeah,
there
I think,
was
I think
I'm
we
sorry,
have to
just a
keep
bit.
25%.
What? Say
There-
again.
sorry. There was, a big part of where the rewards came from originally is that we didn't have anything set in place for people to be rewarded. So basically, rewards were for setting up the program and getting us to a point where there are abilities to have rewards or make these fund requests. So originally, to hit that amount per month, ambassadors, excuse me, losing my voice, up to 60 hours in a month. If you hit that 60 hours or 60 task points basically in the month, then you got the full amount of those rewards. Now that it's cut down quite a bit, I think it was 4,200 and some odd AGIX. Now it's closer to 800 or 900, closer to 900, I think. Yeah, the expectation should be different, but we never really elaborated on it.
Okay, cheers. I knew there was something that I'd read somewhere. So yeah, that was it.
Great stuff.
It is interesting. It was kind of set up to reward, next quarter, maybe that 17% goes back to the greater pool because there's going to be even more ways for people to make fund requests and the work groups are going to be even more hashed out. Tommy, what's up?
I think, and maybe TVL can check this. I thought we had set like 35% of meetings. We lowered it because we were all suffering from meeting burnout, and we realized we couldn't keep doing 100% or whatever it was. So 35 sticks in my mind for some reason.
Nice. If you have the link to that document, would it be possible if you shared it so we can just add the reference into the Mario board, please? And I would like to field any questions you have about the core ambassadors. You can fill in these green boxes. And whilst there are no questions there are some questions currently with the leadership team and roundtable, so we can circle back to core ambassadors. I would love to have a little look at this leadership roundtable and field any questions that you guys have. I'll just create a few more spaces for questions. There we go. Some questions we had already were how to elect the leadership team on consensus or consent. They already elect. Yeah. How long should leaders serve on the round table? Who should be on the leader team and how many? Those are the basic questions. If you have any more, please put them in here. And we can start by filling in any thoughts that we have on these yellow tabs, please. And if anyone's not on the Miro board, you're welcome to say in the meeting, and I can put them directly in. Anyone else have any more questions they would like that they're wondering about with this leadership or ambassador roundtable?
Curious too if anybody's against having some form of roundtable or if they have any alternative solutions as well. And then the term roundtable isn't set in stone, but it from my perspective, I think it's a cool name, has history to it.
Well, especially for our British friends on the other side of the pond, Crandano.
Question. No, mate, it's not history, it's myth.
Because it wasn't archived properly. Question is, what would compensation be?
Sorry, I didn't hear that question, Tommy. Could you repeat it again?
What would compensation be? Should be, I think, one of the tickets. I'm not in the Miro board, so I can't write down, but thank you.
Oh,
Compensation, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's something we've discussed in past meetings is what's the incentive for people to step up and take leadership. You know, if somebody sees something and they call it out, sometimes it seems like there's only disincentives to do that. So there does need to be some form of compensation or incentive to take lead, in my opinion, anyways. Vanny, do you have any suggestions on some different way of leadership or decisions to take place?
Yeah, I wanted to add to the questions. What are the duties of leaders?
I'm sorry, Sukrin, what did you say? Could you repeat that?
What are the duties of the leaders?
Yeah,
I was
from
asking the duties of leaders. Should be one of the questions there.
I think like program-wide processes. It's definitely a thing. Appeals process. Yes.
Maybe yeah, I guess it's a little biased, but running at least 2 workshops and participating one another. This means it, and maybe 2 different days, events on 2 different days. So that kind of gives this robust time and place requirement, which means he has to collaborate with somebody. And then you basically automatically in. But now the question is, because again, we don't really want to kind of push leadership team to be in some kind of weekly or bi-weekly calls to kind of do something. But idea is to, I guess, we could experiment there, like practices of sharing their activities. Although we're currently doing that in town hall, so we need to think something more unique out. But yeah, to me, leadership kind of, the whole purpose of being a leader is to bring everybody else up. So it has to be something that already town hall is something doing, but how could we basically do it even better?
Yeah, that's nice. I like that. It's about bringing everyone else up in a way. We haven't heard from Roho.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, or from Sisal?
I was just gonna say briefly. Oh, go ahead, Roho. I see you just unmuted.
But I was just gonna say, I don't really have like an educated opinion on this, so nothing so far.
Nice.
I was gonna say, if you don't mind me bringing it up too, I fly before the meeting. I thought I had a cool idea if there are level 5, or whatever we end up calling it. People being able to choose their name as well. You know, somebody might want to, you know, be called a wizard or something, you know, just something random. We ideated like maybe somebody wants to be called fool or jester or mother or ombudsman or something like that. Some, you know, does it need the overall name roundtable? Maybe, but also people could kind of choose their own names would be cool as well. Prince Charming, yes. But reason I mentioned that too is because, yeah, we're all in this space because we believe in decentralization, right? And then when you talk about leadership and roundtables, it's like, well, that feels a bit centralized. How do you fix that? But also with more recent discussions on DAO minimalism, people like Grace Rachmani really tackling these DAO concepts, and big reasons they don't work sometimes is that you do need some form of systems like this. I don't want it to be too serious of a name or for people to think it's too serious of a rule. But if there's an appeals process or something, and you get 3 anonymous feedback forms that say, person X did Y and Z, I really, don't feel comfortable, or I don't think they should be in the program, there should be maybe a coordinated group that's just like makes the final decision on it or something like that, or just these very big decisions where it seems like there can't be consensus, at the same time allowing the ability for everybody that's level 3 or whatever in the program to make overall decisions, right?
Yeah, it was one idea that came up during the workshop with Grace, that it could be, for instance, if there could be 3 of these leaders which are picked on a random basis to deal with each subject that arises, thereby kind of maintaining some kind of synonymity, so that yeah, to avoid conflict. One of the things that we could look a bit at is this question of there's been some talk before of how many on the leadership team, and it's been suggested before of 5, between 5 and 7. It was around that number. I see someone's written in 12 on the leadership team. One immediate consideration for that is that for the number 12 is that it's too many people in order to meet. We've had kind of 11 on this current ambassador role, and it's usually about 5, maybe 6 people who are consistently engaging in discussions or attending the meetings. So one of the things about making this a smaller number was the idea that everyone can meet and it's kind of more possible. There's been a lot of talk about this, how many on the leadership team, but it helps me to think about, rather than that question, more who should be on the leadership team, aka who is leading already, is kind of the response question I have to that. And when I think of this, who is leading already, it becomes a lot more simpler to kind of see who is on the leadership team rather than setting it at a certain number. There are also some thoughts here. It should be people who are not already leading, ? And also, what if we end up with 7 people from the same broad area of the ecosystem? How do we ensure all kinds of diversity? So maybe we can focus on these 2 questions for now and field your thoughts for moving forward.
Yeah, I am curious on it should be people who are not already leading. I'm wondering why we would want people in the program that aren't taking any leadership to be leaders, or is that more of a thought that we should help spur those people to want to take lead? Or because my thinking at level 3 is not everybody wants to lead a work group. Some people just want to contribute. Not everybody wants to go to a leadership meeting. Not everybody wants to know a little bit of overall what's happening in the program. Whereas some people probably take interest in these things.
Yeah, and I guess, someone who may not want to facilitate might want to engage and contribute in these high-level program-wide initiatives.
Sometimes leadership in a program like this is just jockeying for position and fighting back when people silence you. So I almost think that it could be interesting to have people who have not thrown their hat into that ring and are not keen to lead. There's a saying somewhere that nobody should be a leader if they actually want to be a leader, because that shows that they've got all that corruptible ambition and it's all very problematic. So somebody who doesn't want to lead, I'd rather see on the leadership team.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. How do you imagine that would work? I'm very curious. I would love people who are not kind of these macho talkative people to be leading. I do think there's kind of how would we facilitate people who are not already leading in the program? And is it something that we want to say, hey, we have these leadership positions, we have these people that are leading the program already, but we don't want them to be leaders, or we don't want them to be these roles. We want someone new to be this leadership role. How would we imagine onboarding someone into that?
I mean, for me, I think I'd just think about dropping the word leader and leadership. It's such a weighted word and it has such a lot of cultural connotations.
Yeah, that is where kind of
these work groups all happens within a short period of time. You're not really opening yourself up to every time zone by limiting it to the few hours of a day that you guys operate within. So it's pretty hard to reach out and find new people when we're limited in that regard. And we always have issues with attendance in certain work groups. I would say that if it was just a common practice to start with Discord, especially if we're not going to use Read AI, like Discord could be much more utilized when it comes to interacting with one another and organizing in different times, at different times for different purposes, or just to say hi and collaborate on whatever it is that people wish to collaborate on. I'm driving home.
Yeah, it's nice considerations. I totally agree. Dropping the word leader that is culturally weighted and has so many connotations. I totally agree with that. Okay, so from that, there's two questions. Renaming or defining this role with a name. And
I like the thought of colors that we've had before, as Grace mentioned, like colors of belts, but we don't have to imagine it as colors of belts if that's too hierarchical thinking. But like, yeah, having various colors, like when people come in, they get orange, they know that they're on this path, they become a contributor, it's the next color, level 3, another color. But or the levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever fits for people. And yeah, I agree, like names are a big deal. That's where if people were like level 5, they could come up with their own name and have fun with it, and it doesn't have to be leader. It reminds me of like Grace did lead a class called DAO Leadership, but when you take the class, it doesn't really tell you how to become a leader of a DAO or anything about that. It's more about, I don't know, maybe the failures of DAOs and coming up with these new concepts. And I never really heard much about leader in the actual course. But Rojo, I see your hand up. What you got?
Yeah, I wanted perhaps Vanny or the other people that agreed with the change in the name leader to talk more about why is this word loaded. I'm not very familiar with the reasons, so perhaps you can share them with us.
sounds great. Would you like to go ahead, Vanny?
Sorry, I've just got to hop off for a second. I'll be back in a minute.
Okay. Yeah, let's table that question until she comes back. I guess like there is the question of naming it. I think for simplicity, I quite like this round table phrase. It's like everyone is on the same level, like not really hierarchical. But yeah, the question of who should be on the round table. What are your guys' thoughts on this? Or I guess how many also is linked to this? Rojo, you have your hand up.
But I believe there are two aspects of this, like especially because there is so much concentration on namings and all these things. I would like to get a point across as well. There is two faculties of naming. Basically, you would like to make it clear what this thing is for, and then second thing is that you would like to get people involved in this thing, which is whatever leadership group, roundtable, whatever it is. So you need to make it clear what this thing does, and second thing, you need people to be interested in joining it in the first place. And so that you achieve these two faculties, perhaps there are others, but these two faculties that I'm concentrating on, to achieve those, the naming has to be a little bit clear. I mean, it cannot be something that is neutral, doesn't have any sense of hierarchy, doesn't have any sense of anything. It has to mean something. For example, when you say leader, usually people can imagine there is someone on the top that has more privileges, whatever, blah, blah, blah. While it can be loaded in some sense, in many other sense, it actually makes it clear for people that there is something to look forward to. So there might be some interest because it's a higher position than where they are currently. And it gives more of a context of what you're doing. Like you're kind of a leader of this whole ambassador program alongside many others, and it's something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, we should think about naming just not in the sense of making it neutral, but also in the sense of actually trying to load it with positive and meaningful things.
Rojo, that's some really strong points there, and the thought process that I put into the term roundtable or mandala, which I'm also up for, which essentially means the same thing, people sitting in a circle, is for that image that it's a council of elders, as Waka said, it's to give direction, but we're in this decentralized Web3 world, we really are walking a tightrope. So you see, and the slides from the very first meeting I held was Shakespeare's quote, "A rose by a rose is still a sweet," but what's in a name seems to disturb people. Already there's pushback, and we don't know why yet, but she'll explain, for the term leader. I don't culturally, but I don't think that's the right term for this concept. What I do find fascinating, and I didn't bring it up, and I haven't seen anybody else raise it. I don't see it in the slips. What's the purpose of this thing? No one's asked that question. What's the goal? What is the principle that it's to be guided by? Its true north, so to speak. When King Arthur mythically formed the round table, there was a purpose for it. And yeah, I see what are the duties of the leaders. I saw that, but nothing on the overall concept of what are we trying to accomplish. And I think that's the most important principle of this concept, whatever it's named. And I think roundtable or mandala get across the message. It's a council of elders without being overly offensive or too centralized. My thoughts.
Yeah, so is your question related to the purpose of the leaders specifically?
No, not the leaders. No, not the leaders. And that's where you start off on the wrong foot. Purpose of this device, this vehicle, this council, whatever you want to call it. What is its purpose? And I'm deliberately trying not to name it other than Roundtable. And Vanny's back. She has her hand up.
Yeah, I've got my audio back. Thank you. Yeah. I think the question was something about what's wrong with leadership. What does it culturally mean? I've put a few things in the chat about what it means, and I'm desperately trying to find a website that a few of us put together about a year ago on the concept of unleadership. It's not completely a concept we made up. If you Google it, you'll find other things, but the whole point of us being in a decentralized system is that we're trying to dismantle hierarchies and leaderships. We're trying to actively work against them. If people are interested in the whole concept of the round table and what that means culturally, you can't have leaders with it. The whole point of it is that everybody in the round table is on the same level. At the early medieval period when this comes from, there would be a square table where somebody is at the head of it, and by making the table round, you completely rid yourself of that. Now, we're all educated to have hierarchies and to look up to some people and look down on others, and so it's hard work. But this is the work that, if we care about decentralization, that we should be doing. So having leaders at the top of our organization, to me, feels completely wrong for driving that kind of approach to decentralization. And it comes from an old world that I don't want to pay lip service to. So that's what I got it.
Yeah, cool.
I'd like to ask you,
Can
I ask Vanny something?
Yes, you can, Rayo.
Thank you. Vanny, I was wondering, do you think, as first of all, I noticed that you, perhaps, I don't know if it's a misunderstanding, but maybe it is. So the purpose here is not calling some people in that roundtable leaders and some others not, but the purpose is like the group that is basically sitting virtually on this roundtable will be kind of a form of leaders. And here, leaders doesn't mean like it's not let's say an adjective for this one person who will be running the roundtable or something, but it's more of like a characterization of what this group of people sitting in the roundtable is doing, which is kind of taking a leadership role within the ambassador program. And this is how it's categorized. And I don't see the negative on that, to be honest, because I grew up in a culture where we always compared leadership with things like just dictatorship or stuff like that, and we always saw that the leadership was more on the positive role. And it doesn't mean where like this one person or maybe two people are taking over everything, but it's more of like a set of characteristics. Some of them are guidance and good vision, collaboration. All of these are incorporated in the leadership role.
I think all I can say is that all my life I've heard people saying, oh, but when I say leader, I don't mean any of these nasty things that you mean. But they always do. They always do mean that. As a long-time feminist, I can say that the women's movement tries consistently to undermine and question these hierarchies and these rigid structures, and to kind of rethink an approach to how we govern ourselves, that maybe we can look at whether we really need to hang ourselves on these structures of leadership. I mean, you know, if you're coming from a different culture and you see it differently, then you do, and that's cool. But all I'm doing is saying how I experience it and the effects that I've seen it have over a couple of decades of community organising.
I think that's a really nice point. Can I just interject?
One second, because I would really like to understand what Vanny means, because the sense that I'm getting now is actually to cancel this whole group, whatever you want to call it, leadership group. Or
can I make an intervention as the facilitator of this meeting? Let's from now on try to be aware a little bit more of speaking over each other. That's something I remind myself of as well as everyone else. Just to give a little context for Vanny, that whilst you were away, Rojo raised some points about that this role needs simplicity and clarity. That it's possible to load it with something positive and meaningful. And I would like to kind of relate this a bit back to a lot of what my work is. If I'm doing an event, sometimes it's called being a facilitator, and other times it's called being a workshop leader. Now, how I call what role I'm doing, which is the same depending on the different audience or the different label. It depends on the customer, the client, whether I'm actually calling myself a facilitator or a leader. If they're more like Web 2, then I'm a workshop leader, perhaps in that context. But in another context, a more artistic context, for instance, then it would be called a facilitator. I want to just like reiterate that we're not going to agree, all of us, about definitions of words. And I would like to kind of, through this process, decentralize it enough that we can each agree, like the minimum viable agreement. And then beyond that, people can call the role whatever they like, but actually on the ground, what does it look like? So I think we can always talk about these labels. I think one thing is to make it simple and clear, but also I want to reiterate Vanny's point that I think it's a very good point that we're trying to dismantle these hierarchical structures that have been present for so long. And I think we should be thoughtful about like what are the connotations for labeling it as this? What kind of does this represent when people come into the community? Especially like if we call ourselves suddenly leaders, for instance, then maybe there's less of a self-organization, and people go in, they see someone with the label of a leader and they ask them, oh, what do I do? That's not what we're trying to do in terms of developing an emergent self-organized organization. Yeah, just some thoughts before I throw it over to you guys again.
Tommy,
Please.
what you got?
Let me be a little oil on the roiled waters here. We each have our own competencies, and if we were in a room together, I spent 20 years and developed a multi-million-dollar insurance business. Would any of you debate that I would be the insurance expert in the room? On the other hand, if you talk to me about doing videos, Rojo has seen my video talents and he wouldn't even publish them. He's the expert in this room on videos and mathematics because the guy is a brainiac. Vanny, I have 4 sisters, but I will bow to your expertise in feminism and also archiving. Does that mean any of us is a leader? Or is it that we have our competencies and expertise? Now, when I came up with this concept and I proposed in the first work group, I told a story, which I'm going to tell again. And here is where the concept came from, and it's not one of leadership. I had a martial arts teacher, Kung Fu, karate. He was from North England, spent time in Japan and went through the belt system and had his leg broken and went to China to heal, and he met a Tibetan monk. And I trained with the Tibetan monk and Peter Gates. And he said to me one time when we were training, he was also one of my acupuncture teachers. And we got into this concept of leadership and boss and black belts and all this other bullshit that we are trying to rework in this new world. And he said to me, Tommy, he says, do you know what a mandala is? And I said, I don't know. And he says, it's a circle. It's like the Pennsylvania Dutch hex symbol. But basically, it comes from people sitting around a campfire. And he says, today, because we're training in Gung Fu, I am the expert. You can think of me as the ladder, the boss, the director, but I am not higher than you on a ladder. We are in a mandala. We sit in a circle, and tomorrow your expertise will become paramount. And this concept of mandala or round table, only because it's more anglicized, is about the expertise that each person will bring, not leadership, but expertise, and developing this decentralized organism that we're working on. So we can get into cultural differences and terminology arguments on a name, but it's, think of the concept of you sitting equally with other members and you are the expert. And I would almost say that the question of what is, and I got to look for what is the role or the purpose of the people on the round table, if we still call it that. And I would say that if there's 7 of us, we should each be an expert in something different. We should not complement each other. I would say if it's 5, there should be 5 different experts. And I don't know what that expertise is, but none of us, I don't think of it as leadership. I think of it as a lighthouse, okay, up against the rocks, guiding ships. Call it what you want. But let's not fight about this. Let's not argue about this. There's too much we need to get done to get roiled up about terminology. Thank you.
Yeah. Walter says 5 levels in an organization is of 40 active people is way too many. I do agree. However, the purpose is not to be 40, is to be more like 400. Something like this. Rojo, you have your hand up.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, what's up, Rojo?
Nothing much.
Gran, you had something to say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I agree. Like we took a lot of time on a word, which is good. Rojo had questions and Vanny had great answers too. And really at the start of it, it's like, well, if a word offends anybody, that's the big reason, and maybe offend is even the wrong word. But that's why I brought up, if there is a level 5 or whatever we want to call it, a round table, if people get to that level or position or whatever we want to call it, people can have their own name within it. And I think that could be fun. For instance, I'd want to be called a fool or something similar, like a jester would be good, or anything like that, just for fun. So we've taken a lot of time on this, so it'd be nice to move on. Rojo, what you got?
Yeah, before we move on, I just want to clarify something. I mean, when I was talking to Vanny, I wanted to make sure that I understand what you actually meant, because to me, what I understand from the argument and what Fly also mentioned, what I understand is that somehow hierarchies ought to be, annihilated from this group, which kind of goes counterintuitive to what both the individuals, whether Fly or Vanny, are actually doing. If you're participating in the, let's say, you don't like leadership, I don't know what to call it, to be honest, or on a certain work group, then how can you work against that? I don't understand. Or if we're talking about like setting up a certain round table, if we're against hierarchies, we shouldn't even be talking about that. We shouldn't even actually have levels. We should just have level 1, and that's about it. And everyone is equal, which I'm not in favor of. But anyway.
I would like to think these, instead of round table, perhaps round tables, and keep the participant amount kind of like infinite. But again, coming back to what Tommy mentioned, that we find these unique expertise areas or domains that we could just fill up the round table to be like, we have in Ambassador Pro 10 round tables, each has 5 people in, all of them have unique competencies. And when we have a critical discussion, we are able to kind of construct the solution. Or just
That's a really nice thing. Just aware of time for us to move on, but I think this definitely feeds into Walter's comment, which I've copied in here. We'll just read it out. That leadership may include vision, figurehead, subject expertise, organizational skills, execution expert, select and delegate, and indeed mentorship. I think this seems to be where we are kind of, this conversation is being directed, that actually rather than choosing some age-old name which can be kind of have so many connotations, that actually by labeling more specifically what people are actually doing could kind of enable that more. I think for simplicity, I would like recommend for myself, and welcome you guys too, to use this round table name until something better comes up. I see, Walter, you have your hand up. Let's take your question or your comment before we head
Very
in.
quick note where that list comes from. I was trying to understand, like, nobody can have all of those properties. So what great, whatever, top people can do is to understand their strengths, play to them, and effectively select and delegate everything else. In combination, that could be awesome. But oftentimes, such, top people try to assume everything and invariably screw up.
Yeah, great considerations. I do see that we've been dancing around the question of actually who should be on the round table, and who is leading already, is this response question I had to that. I see we've been dancing around this, but it needs to be tackled. So let's let this stew until another time. Let's now move over to deep funding round 3, and kind of put our perspective a little bit outside the program to look at deep funding and how we can engage in this. So there are 5 pools. New projects is 750k, ideation is 50k, marketing 50k, tooling 150k, and SNet requests, RFPs 530k. I welcome you to take a look at the article.
Just briefly too, the next roles and levels meeting is on Friday, right? Or are there any plans on onboarding to touch any of this, or is there other agenda for onboarding? And then I noticed Friday on the calendar there is a levels and roles meeting, so I just want to make sure everybody's aware of the next session.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Yeah, if anyone wasn't aware, you've heard it already now. There's a session on Friday, which we hope this content which we've been developing as questions can feed into that session. You're welcome to join. And if you can't attend, you can put down any more comments or notes, and we'll take it forward into that one. The goal mandate regarding deep fund coverage today is to look at how we can engage from the ambassador program, from individuals here, to get thoughts initially on ways that we can like propose, whether that be for ideation, for marketing is probably the two pools I see us most chance of engaging in.
Oh yeah, let me
Yes.
grab these links for you, Walter. I'll post them in the chat.
Thank you. Thanks. So we have until the 4th of September, 3rd of September to put proposals in. Then there's a stable period for just over 2 weeks. Do you guys have questions, thoughts? Let's just throw it over to you guys for some initial thoughts before we dive into it for the last little while of the meeting.
Yeah, the deadline is September the 3rd, I believe. And yeah, mainly you wanted to bring it up just to let everybody know that this deep funding round is open now, and for different work groups to start kind of considering and thinking about it. It does seem like marketing could be one that's tackled, whether, marketing chat, video writers. It could be a target if anybody in those groups are interested in doing a proposal to deep funding. That could be pretty cool. There's also a pool ideation, just a pool for people to bring ideas and get funded to get those ideas brewing. I think the maximum is 5K, with $50,000 total in that pool. What's up, Tommy?
Two thoughts. We don't have a developer here, but TiVo, I don't know if Andre filled you in about trying to create a UI for your treasury tool. We talked a little bit about putting in a deep funding. He didn't know if I don't know what's with Swarm, and he didn't know if he could do a proposal that quickly. That's one thing. You may want to comment on that, TiVo. And the other thing is marketing. I think I suggest strongly that we come up with a marketing proposal for the SNet. I like the idea of buying one of the little small robots and training it and taking it around to schools. And if we can get one, then we could buy others and go out and market. We got Sil here, who's a teacher. I think he's going to put in a proposal. But if we can get a little bit of assistance and buy one of these from Hanson Robotics, we could really blow up education and do a hell of a lot of marketing for SNet.
Yeah,
I don't know much about the treasury management updates because that on a different infrastructure, it's hard to kind of change something. Oh, okay, this new feature, okay, I'm gonna add it, and then it's that. Like in Excel, I'm able to do that in hours, where pulling the full stack, it takes usually then several days and coordination.
Yeah, that's great. I know that Andre was saying that he will develop this casually over the next couple of months, as it's a kind of swarm project that's a service, I think, being provided to, 12 organizations currently. So, I mean, it's an interesting reference for us that as the ambassador program, what services can we provide to the ecosystem? What value can we provide? With marketing, I think it's kind of possible, but we need to perhaps demonstrate this value more, or level up professionalism It was one thing doing the Deep Fund Town Hall compared to the processes in the ambassador program. It was a good reminder of the kind of deadlines which are stipulated by an organization when you're providing services. And yes. Anyone have any other thoughts?
Just perhaps a little addition to what Tommy was saying. A lot of the great marketing that the project has been getting, I mean, SingularityNET as a whole has been getting, mainly came from Sophia and Desi and all the other robots, to be honest. Like whenever you see that kind of the project made it to mainstream media, like outside of the whole AI and the blockchain niche, usually it's because of something that perhaps Sophia said or something like that. So I think, yeah, going to school with the little robot would make a good run for its money.
Yeah, it's interesting how much we love to kind of anthropomorphize technology and AI.
I posted Edify's proposal as it's a solid example of using the ideation pool that got funded the last round.
Is it something that I understand with teams and proposers, some people like to keep their ideas kind of closer to the chest and others like to air them out. I wonder if you guys are interested in sessions within this upcoming month that kind of focus and help to build out specific proposals. Would that be something you're interested in, both on, say, a larger group scenario or a one-on-one basis? What do you guys feel? Like, okay, let's do a little game. Let's pretend that everyone here is doing a proposal. Now try to imagine if you're doing this imaginary proposal. Do you want to share it with no one? Do you want to talk to one or two people about this? Or would you like to bring this to a group scenario to work on together? Let's just have a round going through everyone here.
Yeah, I think personally mine would be open because it wouldn't be as technical as some people's. I could see why, somebody that's maybe has a really good AI idea or something like that might want to keep it a bit closer to them. Whereas for me, it would likely be, the deep funding town halls that the investor program's been taking on. That'd be probably a good one to get funded again. And I'd have no quarrels with being open about it and getting feedback and maybe even improving the proposal from last time.
Yeah, I question. I don't think I can put a proposal in. So I would need someone else to work on the proposal for acquiring a little robot and marketing it. And then eventually we would need to get, I guess I could use a vehicle, or a school teacher could use a vehicle, but maybe we want to get a van and drive around and advertise it. But I can't make the proposal. I do not believe from an ethical standpoint. So if someone wants to step up and propose that, I would support it, help, and do whatever I could, but without my name on it.
Nice.
Walter, your question about coverage. Do you mean in deep funding or the ambassador program, or where does that question stem from?
To me, ambassador means going out places and representing there and assuring information flows. So maybe I'm like totally wrong because I'm going off of the ambassador in international relations.
Yeah, I like that. I think there should be, or it would be cool if there was an avenue for people. There has been interest previous of people that want to go to these meetups that SingularityNET are going to be at, or even meetups where they're not going to be at. It'd be cool to find an avenue to get people out there in public talking about what they're interested in SingularityNET.
Yeah, basically look for the underserved subject areas, geographic locations, stuff like that. I haven't yet investigated what Crandano and mainnet are going after, but I'm sure there are gaps. The other thing, I think our outreach is largely one-directional. I don't think we do enough to close the loop.
You know, Walter, I used to work for the ambassador U.S. to England, and that's all he did. I worked on his estate, and he had an apartment in Manhattan, and he came out to the estate once or twice a year. But all he did was go to England. But what is behind the scenes is a complete embassy in London and a home in New York and staff and infrastructure. And this program's been a year, just over a year. We're almost at the end of building the infrastructure. When I came into the program, I wanted to go out and write articles and get out and go to meetings. Last year, I traveled on my own dime to Catalyst's Cardano's meeting in Texas and CNFTCon in Las Vegas and Rare Bloom in Colorado. And I just did it because. And I would love to do that on behalf of SNET, but we don't have the infrastructure. And as much as this decentralized world, we say we don't want hierarchy and we don't want bureaucracy, a certain amount is needed. And we're almost there. We're so close. We just opened the doors for new people to come in, and I think we're going to handle it greatly. And that's why the marketing, I think we get one of these little dolls or whatever it is, we will start getting out there. We'll start doing that. I'm a born salesman. I want to be out. But if you don't have the support and the infrastructure, it doesn't work.
We kind of already went over the onboarding, but I know the challenge, like at Gitcoin, there was like the broad onboarding and then the specific, initiatives with the actual like tasks and positions. And there was a huge gap, right? It wasn't coordinated. So to me, these are two separate initiatives. So somehow, either the kind of like subject area people recruit directly, so they are right there on the front lines, or there is an effective kind of like matching. Sort of the onboarding person full-time acts as a matchmaker. The other thing that happened, basically, we cannot be about universal employment. I mean, we cannot get a paying gig to every person that comes through the door for a number of reasons that are not limited to money. We just cannot handle,
Yeah.
a growth at.
I agree. And I think relating this back to deep funding, I think it does give an opportunity to really professionalize these skills, which can be developed in an embryonic form in the ambassador program. And it's maybe a opportunity for you guys to think specifically about what skills you're professionalizing or working with professionally, that you can enable that with a proposal in deep funding.
I just wrote down, it's been talked about before in the deep funding meetings, but having scouts that go out, and it reminds me of us talking about ambassadors going out, but having scouts that go out and find existing AI projects to join the marketplace and join deep funding. That could even be a proposal for those interested in the ambassador program.
Yeah, nice.
I've been sifting with kind of various articles that justify that there is indeed legitimate overlap between blockchain and AI, and some arguments are more compelling than others. But like the fact that SNET's charter is all about AI with no like blockchain straight in it is a little worrying to me.
What part with no blockchain? Are you talking about the marketplace or?
No, striving for AGI does not like the decentralized ledger or whatever applications of this other stuff. It's very interesting technology beyond like just speculative tokens. And somehow I have ideas of what those overlaps could be. Other people kind of hint at it, but I really haven't seen much kind of digging into it. And I think we kind of owe it to the ecosystem to figure it out, coming from this background.
I think you should definitely.
Sounds like a good opportunity for articles or. Sorry, Fly, what were you gonna say?
Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I was just gonna say good opportunity for articles or videos or anything to be summarized, like you said.
And you should also check out Hypercycle. Because I think there's Ajax, but is trying to be developed as already a platform and a foundation for these other smaller protocols which are necessary for beneficial benevolent AGI. But we do see they need to be developed in modular form, right? Especially with the slow growth of the Cardano ecosystem, as I think affected it, where SingularityNET has to develop like their own customary tools, like for staking, for instance, as a basic one. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, there's a huge realization over the past 2-3 years that, you know, developing on Cardano was a lot harder than what was kind of hinted at, and things are starting to come together now, it seems. For blockchain, yeah, you've got the marketplace, AGIX used for API calls, but the marketplace is in such still barbaric state. We need to find an update on when they're going through their updates, because they've been talking about it for a while. NewNet's been using NTX. They've got a lot of really cool test nets spun up and things that they've been doing with people. Last I knew, months ago, they had over 150 testers. I would think the number's probably a lot larger by now. And then Rejuve and their beta app and rewarding people for using the health application. Hypercycle, Hype-C, and creating a ledgerless blockchain, TODA.
That's great. We're just coming up to the hour. We have 1 minute left. I would love to throw it open to any of you guys if you have any last thoughts you'd like to share or for us to record. Yeah. Or forever hold your peace. A grumble by TiVo. I think that's a grumble of consent. Nice.
Very powerful meeting, gentlemen, ladies. Thank you very much for hosting and being a strong facilitator, Fly. You did a great job there. Thank you.
Thanks,
See you guys
man.
on the flip side. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care, guys. It's been lovely to see you. Thanks for contributing. And see you sometime soon.